want to start off our class today with a classic scenario. A classic scenario when it comes to the topic of lying, truth-telling, deceit. Say that you live in Nazi Germany during World War II, and you are hiding Jews in your home. Now a Nazi comes up to your front door, they knock on your door and they tell you, "We have heard reports of some suspicious activity going on in your home, and we think that you might be hiding Jews." In that moment, when they question you, what do you do? Do you tell them the truth because you are committed to that moral standard? So you tell them the truth and you say, "Hey, listen, yeah, I'm hiding Jews. They're in my basement." Surely signing the death warrant for your friends? Or do you deceive the Nazi and potentially lying to them and thereby hopefully saving your friends, the Jews that you are hiding? What do you do and why? And this is not going to be. I actually want engagement here. I'm wanting to know what you guys think. What do you do in this situation?
Lie and say the truth.
Lie and say the truth, says Miss Patricia. Okay. Does anyone else disagree? Or who agrees with Miss Patricia? Who would say yes? Deceive the Nazi. Okay.
That's my truth later.
Okay. Mr. says, "Hey, even if it's a sin, I'm saving lives. We're good." Okay.
I realize that if you made a confession, you also bring yourself there. Because you can
Okay. Potentially. So he said, "Hey, listen, if you tell the truth and you say, 'Hey, yeah, I have been hiding Jews,' they're going to kill you too." Which is definitely a possibility. Do I have anyone in here who would take the stance of, listen, never deceive, because God's standards, they never change. They're objective. And God's a sovereign God. So long as I tell the truth, He's going to make sure that His will is going to be done. I'm not called to, I'm called to seek first God's kingdom and His righteousness. So I'm never going to compromise. Do I have anybody who would take that stance?
No.
Interesting. I figured I'd have at least one person. Yeah, Ruthann?
I do take that stance. Now, I also would not admit that I have Jews in my basement. But I don't know why. I don't know what that separates.
Yeah. So then you're recognizing, well, I wouldn't want to deceive, but at the same time, I don't want to tell the truth and give them up.
Right.
So you recognize there's a great tension here. Well, I'll give you a few different views here. I'll give you a few different views. So some people say that God's moral standards, in instances like these, they actually change. Okay? Most of us are probably not here. But some people say, yeah, listen, they change. Even though you're lying, listen, it's not a sin, because in these cases, God expects you to preserve life, do whatever you can do to make that happen. This is more of a form of what we talked about, individual moral relativism. Okay, God's law, it's subjective. You're the determiner of what's actually right and wrong in hard situations. At the end of the day, you're just doing what the ends justify the means, so to speak. Okay, some people say the God's standards, they never change, and it seems that some of you might be here. So listen up, this is very important. The difference between numbers 2 and 3, they're slim. Okay, so some people say that God's standards, they never change. God clearly says that lying is wrong, but He also says that we should strive to preserve life. So in this case, the preservation of life is simply more important than the prohibition to lie. And so you lie to protect the Jews, or at least you deceive to protect the Jews, and this is not a sin. Now, in this view, there's no exceptions to moral absolutes. View 1, there's exceptions. It's you get to do whatever you want. The ends justifies the means. In this, there's no exceptions, but in hard situations, some people call these impossible moral conflicts. In these scenarios, there are exemptions. So when there is no clear right and wrong, you have to choose between the lesser of two evils, then God expects you to choose the lesser of the two, and in that situation, you're not sinning. You're making the best decision that you can make, and God's not going to hold that over you. You're saying?
How do you determine the lesser of two evils? Where is the grade that tells us what more clear than another?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We then asked, how do you know this grade? And it's funny you use that word, because the word for this kind of view is graded absolutism. God's moral standards, they're absolute, but they're graded. So in this situation, they say, listen, preserving life is more important to God than the prohibition to lie. Ruth Ann's asking a really good question. How do you determine this in this situation? Which one is of higher importance? And in other situations, how do you decide which one's of higher importance? And I think that you're putting your finger on, I think, the weakness, potentially, of this view. Now, still others say there's no such thing as an impossible moral conflict. And remember, an impossible moral conflict is when there's really no right or wrong, clear cut. Okay? Some people say, listen, it's black and white. You can lie or not. Right? One should always do what is right, no matter what. No matter what happens, you need to do what's right. So in this case, in this classic scenario, some would say, yes, you must tell the truth no matter what. Let the sovereign God of the universe take care of the results or the consequences. And proponents, you know what people call this view? They call it the obey God's commands view. Okay? You just obey God's commands. You do what God says no matter what. Let the chips fall where they may. So those are kind of our three camps. Okay? By way of summary, let me just summarize them for you. One, either God's standards are moldable by us, so we just make whatever decision brings about the most desirable end. So we lie to the Nazis. Okay, that's position number one. Liking, none of us are there. We're going to be in between numbers 2 and 3. Or God's morals do not change. This would be number 2. God's morals, they don't change, but sometimes when there's an impossible moral conflict, some tragic moral choice, sometimes there's exemptions. We have to compromise a little bit. So we must choose the lesser of the two evils. So in that situation, you still lie to the Nazis. Now the third situation is very interesting. It says God's morals never change. There are no such things as impossible moral conflicts. There's just simply no such thing. We never have to compromise, and so we tell the truth to the Nazis. Okay. I think, does anyone else have like a fourth view that you're thinking of? Trent?
We pick one or four where we say, what does the right commandment actually say?
That's, so he's saying, listen, I don't think that you're representing all the views here. I think that there's a secret door number 4 that we can walk through. And I don't think we have to lie, and I don't think we have to give up our friends to the Nazis. That is a possibility. Yes?
This might be another way of expressing Trent's view. What if lying is sometimes righteous?
That's an interesting way to phrase that. Pastor Justice, what if lying is sometimes righteous? Let me come back to that. Yeah?
What if God's commandment is actually do not lie in specific context rather than do not say something that is not absolutely accurate?
Yeah, so Trent's saying, listen, the definition of lying, we need to address that. And, why don't we just do that? Why don't we do that? I think that's a good idea. Let me Before we go there, let me make sure that I've hit everything that I want to. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good setup. Let's go to God's Word, and let's figure out what is He actually saying in the 9th commandment. And I want to address that question: is lying sometimes righteous? I'm going to say initially no, but I think we'll get there. You'll see why. Well, before we open our Bibles, we're going to talk about the Hebrew midwives, and we're going to talk about Rahab. I hope you guys will think about that. Before we go there, I want to read a few scriptures that talk about lying. So Exodus 20, verse 16, this is the 9th commandment. It says, "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor." Okay? You shall not bear false witness. Trent's question, what does that mean? Okay, well let's listen to a few more scriptures. Job 27:4 says, "My lips will not speak falsehood, and my tongue will not utter deceit." Psalm 5:6 says, "You, God, destroy those who speak lies." Psalm 12:2 says, "Everyone utters lies to his neighbor with flattering lips, and a double heart they speak." Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are His delight. Ephesians 4:25. So that's not Old Testament. Let's go to New Testament. Have things changed? I don't think so. Ephesians 4:25. "Therefore, having put away falsehood, let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another." Colossians 3:9-10. "Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self with its practices, and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its creator." Alright, lastly, Revelation 21:8 says this, "But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death." And that's an interesting one. Liars are put in the same category as murderers, faithless, sexually immoral. So, lying is a big deal to God. We know this. But then we get in these sticky situations. Go ahead and turn your Bibles to Exodus 1. We're going to look at verses 15-21. Exodus 1. Now, this is the story of the Hebrew midwives. Hopefully you've thought about this throughout the past week. I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. So I'm going to read it. Once you guys turn there, I'm going to read it. And then I want you guys to think about a few questions. One, I want you to think about, were the Hebrew midwives, did they act righteously or not? And then, do you think that God views them favorably? I think God views them favorably. Was God pleased with their deception? If it even was deception, you don't have to make that decision. So let's read it, and let's talk about it. It says this, Exodus chapter 1, verse 15. "Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, 'When you serve as a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it's a daughter, she shall live.' But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, 'Why have you done this and let the male children live?' The midwives said to Pharaoh, 'Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They are vigorous and they give birth before the midwife comes to them.' So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong, and because the midwives feared God, He gave them families." So, what do you think? Did the Hebrew midwives, did they act righteously, in their deception. And was it even deception? And was God pleased with them? What do we think? Any thoughts?
Righteous lie.
A righteous lie. Okay? So Seth's sticking with his guns. He's saying, hey, I know we just said liars go to the lake of fire, but this was a righteous lie. Sherry?
I have to agree with that, based on scripture.
Sure.
Acts 5:21.
Okay, read it for us.
But Peter said those who would rather obey God than man.
I'd rather.
Obey the Lord than God.
Yes. So you're saying, you're giving a little bit more context. You're saying in context where God holds one standard of like preserving life higher, they're obeying God in this situation as opposed to obeying Pharaoh who told them to kill the babies. Okay, I can see where you're coming out there. Yes. So, Kristen, right? Okay, so Kristen's saying, listen, the text doesn't explicitly say that they lied, right? It doesn't explicitly say that, and they just were quiet about it. Some might see that as a stretching of the truth. So is omission the same thing as commission? Right? That's the question. And just so that we're on the same page here, commission is actually lying. Omission is just withholding the truth. Emmett?
Yeah, I was going to say, Christians in good company, Wayne Grudem says the same thing.
Yes.
But I think it's interesting that they could have said, we won't do it. We will obey God rather than man.
Yeah.
We won't do it. But they didn't just say that. They said, they give birth before we get there.
Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting. They didn't take that route.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Cheryl? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So when they're smuggling Bibles into Russia, is that right? It was Russia? And that puts another layer on top of this. How do we apply this to missionaries who are in other countries, and the reason they're there is solely because of their deception, which is interesting.
Righteous lie.
A righteous lie. Yeah. Okay, so I think we get a few different views here. So some say, yes, they were like, this is clear deception. Some people say, well, I don't know, and that's what Wayne Grudem says. He's like, I don't know if this isn't clear deception. I don't think it is. I think they're just leaving some things out, and that's not simple. It's interesting. Okay. I think that the most natural way that this to read this statement is to think that the midwives actually did their job in delivering the baby and then let the males live. I think it's the most natural way to read the text. But I understand some people disagree with that. We also see, so the question of, was God pleased with their deception? That's another question we have to deal with. God, I think it says that He dealt well with midwives. He gave them families. And He says that directly after the lie, that the midwives spoke to Pharaoh. And so the phrase isn't placed after the text says the midwives feared God. It's not placed after their actions that allowed the people to multiply. It's that phrase, God dealt well with the midwives, comes directly after the lie or the deception. I'm not willing to call it a lie. So it's interesting. Even if the midwives technically spoke the truth to Pharaoh, like they're still complicit in the deception. Like they're still complicit. So I don't think we can get around that, as some people do. Well, technically, they didn't lie. So that's the take that I hold there. That gives us something to work with. Let's go to Joshua 2, and let's look at Rahab and see if Rahab helps color this picture in a little bit more for us. Okay, this is Joshua 2. We're going to look at verses 1 through 7. We're blowing through our time here. I'm taking too long. I'm going to read this, and then I'll probably just give you a few thoughts, and we'll move on. Okay, so this is Joshua 2. And Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." And they went and came into the house of a prostitute, whose name was Rahab, and they lodged there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, "Behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land." And the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them, and she said, "True, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I don't know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them." But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them with the stalks of flax that she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords, and the gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. So the Hebrew midwives might be a little bit more vague. Here we clearly see Rahab, and she's like, "No, they went that way." And they were in her roof. Like this is clearly, she's clearly intentionally deceiving here, right? Now, there are a few New Testament texts that speak about Rahab, and these are important when we're thinking, was she actually deceitful? Was God pleased with just Rahab and the fact that she housed the spies, or was he also pleased with her deception? Some people pull these 2 things apart. So we have to reconcile that. Hebrews 11:31 says this: "By faith Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies." Okay, so Hebrews 11:31 says that Rahab, she was full of faith, and she didn't perish because she welcomed the spies. It doesn't say because she lied to the pursuers. It just says because she welcomed them. And then James 2:25 says this: "And in the same way, was not also Rahab the prostitute justified by works when she received the messengers," but it says more than that, "and sent them out by another way." So James is praising Rahab, not just for receiving them, but also sending them out another way. And so the question I would ask is, how on earth did Rahab get to the point to where she was able to send them out another way? It was through her deception. It was only through her deception. If she would have told the truth in that situation, just like, this is very similar to our classic scenario between the Nazis and the Jews. The spies, they would have been toast. So, we're running out of time, so we don't have time for interaction here. But I think it's clear Rahab deceived the men that asked her where the Israelites were, and I think it's explicit. I think God approves of her actions here. According to James 2:25 and Hebrews 11:31, God is clearly views Rahab in a favorable light. So there's a whole host of other texts we can go to. We simply don't have the time, but I believe in these Old Testament texts, it's impossible Wayne Grudem thinks it's possible. Some other smart people think it's possible. I think it's impossible to get around the fact that God endorses both the Hebrew midwives and Rahab's deception. I think there's no way to get around it. And you also have text. Think about this. God sends a lying spirit to King Saul, I believe it is. He sends a spirit specifically to deceive. Okay? This is one of those other texts we could talk about. But with that said, God absolutely never endorses lying. We even have examples in Scripture where, like I said, God sends that deceiving spirit. So what do? We see God hates lying, and yet when we see people deceiving others for a seemingly good reason, like the preservation of life in Scripture, God views those actions as seemingly morally good. So does that mean that God endorses lying sometimes and other times He doesn't? I don't think so. I've led John far enough. Let's get to a definition here. And I don't think God's word is schizophrenic. I think He hates lying and He endorses righteous deception. So God hates lying and He endorses righteous deception. This is where I was pushing back a little bit. Pastor Seth kept saying, it's a righteous lie. It's a lie, but it's righteous. God hates lying. There's no such thing as righteous lying. But there is such thing as righteous deception. It all comes down to our definition, okay? All this boils down, how do you define lying? We must use all of God's word, both the texts that say liars will go to the lake of fire and lying is bad, and in Exodus 20:16 that says you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You have to take all that into account, but also you have to take into account the passages like the Hebrew midwives and Rahab. So what do? Well, I think Sam Storms helps us a little bit here. I like his definition. I tweak it a little bit. But I believe lying is intentionally deceiving someone who has two things: a moral and a legal right to know the truth. Lying is intentionally deceiving someone who has a moral and a legal right to know the truth. Okay, now before you tell me I'm just trying to wiggle out of a hard topic by changing definitions, let me give you some analogies real quick. I think that we recognize these two different categories where we can do something in a righteous way and we do something in a sinful way. We recognize these two different categories in a bunch of other different topics, such as killing and murder. Okay, so is killing the same thing as murder? Does anyone think that killing is the same thing as murder? I'm seeing some mind. I don't think it is. But when you kill someone in a sinful way, that's what makes it murder. So we're going to talk about this later in the class. Things like capital punishment, self-defense, and when you're at war are times when killing is not sinful. And it's not murder. Murder is sinful killing. Right? But killing in and of itself is not sinful. Okay? So, another analogy here. Is disobeying the government the same as dishonoring those whom God has placed in authority over you? Is disobeying the government the same as dishonoring the government? We're told not to do that, right? Romans 13. Are those the same thing? Well, then we have to say Daniel was sinful, right? So I don't think it's true. I think when you disobey in a sinful way, then it's dishonoring to those who are in authority, and that's sinful. But disobeying the government is not the same thing. Okay, and then this is just a simple analogy. Is enjoying awesome snacks, like brownies, the same thing as gluttony? Some of us might be guilty of that. I don't know. But is enjoying awesome snacks the same thing as gluttony? I might have eaten one too many. But when you enjoy awesome snacks in a sinful way, by overindulging, then maybe it is gluttony. Gluttony is a sin. But when you enjoy snacks, you can do that in a way that is honoring to the Lord, right? But overindulging, not the same thing. Okay, so I'm a little over time, but I would say in the same way as deceiving, the same thing as lying, and I would say no. When you deceive someone in a sinful way, then it is lying. So there's a righteous way to do it. So back to our classic scenario. What do you do when a Nazi is on your doorstep asking if you're hiding Jews and you in fact are hiding Jews? Well, let's think about our categories here. Your deception, it has to be intentional, and the person who is asking for the information has to have both a legal and a moral right to know the truth. Did the Nazis have both moral and legal right? I think the Nazis had a legal right to know the truth. They're the government, and based on their system, they had a legal right to know the truth in that situation. But they did not have a moral right because they wanted to use that information to do harm to an image bearer. So you're not lying in this situation. You're righteously deceiving someone, just like Rahab and the Hebrew midwives. And as I say that, I don't want anyone to be thinking, well, Mom or Dad, you have a moral right to know the truth, but you don't have a legal right. Nowhere in the government does it say that I have to tell you the truth, Mom or Dad. No. Okay. That your parents, children, they do have a moral and legal right to know the truth. And so even as we think about these definitions, the only time in Scripture where we see this sort of righteous deception, to my knowledge, is for the preservation of life. These are the only times I can think of off the top of my head. I could be wrong. But by and large, it's for the preservation of life when we see righteous deception in Scripture. So I think it's very important for us to remember that 99.9% of the time we should be just telling the truth. And in these very, they're not impossible moral conflicts because there's a right or a wrong way to go about it. But in these more interesting situations, you have to decide for yourself, does this person who wants, do they have a legal and a moral right to know the truth in this situation? So a few just closing questions for us to think about. Is it ever okay to deceive as part of a game? Like the other day, the teams, we played 2 truths and a lie. We really ought to change that to 2 truths and a deception. Right? That's how I would go about it.
Moral and legal.
Yes. I don't think it's never right to lie. Lying is sinful. Scripture's clear. You can never tell a lie, but deception, sometimes you can. I think it's part of the game. You can see it. It's the rules of the game. Can you deceive, this is an interesting one, can you deceive a police officer who asked you how fast you were going?
No.
You deceive them. That's an interesting one. You can think about that. Can you ever deceive a parent? Ever? I don't know. It's interesting. You have to think about it. Can you deceive a child? Parents? Okay, think about this. Okay, parents in the room. Can you ever deceive your child by telling them about the Tooth Fairy? Or Santa? Or Easter bunnies? Yes. Is it ever right? I think this is where we need to come to a strong conviction of what the definition of lying actually is. I like the definition. As long as they have a legal and moral right, they need to tell you the truth. 99.9% of the time, they have both legal and moral right. So you guys can think about those other situations. I know we're over time. Why don't we do this? If there's a few questions, a few people want to push back, maybe I'll take 2 or 3 of those, and then we'll close because I know we're already running a little bit late. Peter? Yeah. See, yeah,
You don't have to answer.
yeah, that's hard. I'm trying to just think through it. I think that's fine, personally. Okay?
So, one quick question.
Yeah.
That's really quick.
Yes.
Alright, but for real, what if we say that the definition of lying is slightly different? So going back to I think that's right. So when you say don't bear false witness against, right? So if you think about all of your examples of lying, it's really about trying to further some selfish goal, whereas was trying to further the kingdom of heaven. So if you think if God's definition of lying is different than our dictionary definition, his definition of lying may be more focused on are you doing this for self-gain? Right? So I may lie and make an excuse as to basically it's for your benefit. I'm not going to tell you because it would hurt your feelings. But it's really for me. Right? But there may be situations where lying or deceiving is actually for the benefit of God. Or the benefit of someone else, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm.
Right. Truly for the benefit of the other person.
Yeah, I'm thinking of situations where, like deception would be beneficial for yourself, and you might think that. So I'm thinking of like missionaries who are being deceitful, and if they are found out, like they're going to go to jail, and you're saying, okay, well they're doing something for the furtherance of God's kingdom, so they can deceive then. But what about just the father of a family who needs to deceive someone to get out of a sticky situation? Otherwise, he's going to die and then leave his family without a father, without a husband. Like, he's doing that for himself, but I'm not ready to say that is sinful. Because I hold to a different definition. But I think that would be the one scenario. Maybe there's a few others that is a potential pushback to that definition. How would you respond to that?
Well, even that, I think that if your true goal is the preservation of your family, then it's not selfish. Like, it's the heart, not the action. Right?
Yeah.
So if my goal is to preserve my own family, then that's a selfish act.
Yeah, sure.
To preserve the well-being of my family, that's what I see. That's how I would
Yeah. Yeah, so that could be a good definition as well there. I think that's a good way to think about it. Emmett?
It just seems like Trent fundamentally agrees with the fact that there's a broader category of deception in which lying would be a sin. It sounds like it just comes down to what innocent the way is defined as.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
It would be like, for selfish motives, person gain,
Yeah.
a righteous reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so long as we hold to that, I think that's really good input. So long as we hold to that, like, there's many ways that we can define what righteous deception and a lie truly is. But I think we all fundamentally understand there's a difference between this righteous deception and lying. And there's different ways we can think about that and go about that. But Well, I said 2 to 3. That was 3. So why don't I close us down in prayer, and then you guys can think about those definitions. You can think about that. And if you got any questions or pushback, you can talk to me later.